I'm Dr. Scout. I'm the director of LGBT Health Link at Centerlink. And every week, we, in a partnership with the National LGBT Cancer Network, their director Liz Margulies and their researcher Michael Baer, pull together the top LGBT wellness stories of the week. I'm going to start actually reading the headlines in a little video form, so hopefully in 3 minutes or less, you can get all the news you may need to know about LGBT wellness. So let's jump right in. First of all, we got 2 awards for bad LGBT health news journalism. There's a story by Watchdog Wire this week trying to scare us into thinking that we're at risk for TB carried by undocumented immigrant minors. Let's just say there's a lot of leaps in that story and you don't need to take them all with them. Second of all, hopefully this is no surprise, but try not to get your LGBT health news from Fox. This week, one of their anchors actually called parents that affirm their child's trans identity child abusers. Luckily, they were resoundingly called out and condemned by LGBT rights groups and as well as medical professional groups. Next up, there were several new articles this week talking about the needs, the medical and mental health needs of LGBT youth. We love to see that out there, including information on hormone therapy for youth and gynecological care for transgender youth as well. Third big story this week, there was a large survey of medical schools and found that, not surprisingly, LGB, sorry, they didn't collect T, students were more depressed and had less social support than their heterosexual counterparts. As well, they also showed discomfort at coming out at school. This actually supports another story we reported a little while ago showing that LGBT surgical residents had similar experiences of alienation. Fourth big story this week, a new paper has been published on the National Longitudinal Study for Adolescent Health, showing that stressful life events from youth to young adulthood in LGB, they didn't collect T, youth increased the risk for diabetes and cardiovascular disease later. Interestingly, even if non-LGB youth had similar risks, it didn't increase their risk for the later diseases. Fifth up, we like to call this story, Oh Come On. Research on orgasms by sexual identity found that lesbians orgasm more frequently during sex than heterosexual or bisexual women. There's a little variation in orgasms by men and sexual orientation, but good news for lesbians this week. Next up, sadly this year, a youth who was being teased at school for being gay committed suicide, but to add insult to injury after that, his eyes were rejected for organ donation because he was a homosexual. I was just actually on Huffington Post Live with the youth's mother. It's a horrible story, and considering the fact that the youth was even a virgin when he committed suicide, it makes no sense whatsoever. This, of course, supports also the blood ban that's showing that heterosexual people who've been exposed to HIV can give blood a year later, but any homosexual males can never give blood ever in their life. So they're both ridiculous. They need to end. Luckily, the mother is starting a campaign and has an online petition to try and change the FDA's policies on these points. And our last big LGBT wellness story this week, the Black Youth Project surveyed 1,500 youth and found differences by race in what they felt the LGBT priorities should be as far as our agenda. Not terribly surprising, Black and Latino youth thought we were giving a little too much attention to marriage equality and that HIV violence, bullying, and services for homeless youth needed to be a bigger part of our national debate and discussion. That's it. That's your news for this week. We made it under 3 minutes. Good luck. We'll see you next week.